Brent, where are you at?
Unemployed.
Why are you unemployed? Have you been trying to find a job? What's happening?
I've been trying to find a job, and the only job that I can get is either a barman or, packing groceries, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, where have you tried? Where have you been going?
Pubs, nightclubs,
To find jobs?
to find jobs, yeah.
Last time I spoke to you, you said you'd never get back into the catering industry.
It's the only job that I'm able to get.
If you had your way and you could, what would you like to do? What is your dream?
Jeez, I've never made my mind up about that. Never. Don't know what to do.
Now listen, I'm worried about you as your aunt. Are you depressed? Are you suffering from depression?
Might be. I don't know.
Why did I find you at home smoking? Why aren't you out there looking for a job?
You'd say I'm lazy. I'm lazy. No ambition.
My sister spoke to me the other day about her 19-year-old son. She was worried about his lackluster approach to life. He was unemployed, lying around on the couch every day, and seemed to be suffering from a slow depression. I thought I could help and asked him to tell me his story. He wrote me a description of his life, in which he said he was born in the wrong packaging, that packaged in a white skin, he had little chance of success in South Africa. I felt sorry for Brent. All his male role models had left the country. His only options besides an absent father are his uncle-in-law, who is black, and his mother, who is married to a woman. His dilemma got me thinking about the subjectivities of the white male in contemporary South Africa, and I wanted to find out more. So I began at the beginning.
On the 6th of April 1652, Jan van Riebeeck landed at the Cape to establish a halfway station to the East Indies. This marked the beginning of 3.5 centuries of black-white confrontation. In 1657, van Riebeeck clashed with the Khoisan leader Achamato, known as Harry die Strandloper. Nelson Mandela characterized him as the first freedom fighter and the first political prisoner on Robben Island. The Dutch expanded eastward, defeating the Khoi and the San in several wars and conquering their land. By the end of the century, they had clashed with the Xhosa at the Fish River. By 1806, the British were installed as the new imperial power in South Africa.
For whites, it was a golden age of privilege.
This was not going to be an easy task for me. I really knew very little about the white man myself. Starting off with my absent father, it seemed that most of the white men in my life had abandoned shore and were living in Canada or Europe. Like most people these days, I begin my journey with the Google button and discover quite a lot of statistical data on white men, but not much else. I begin to build up my composite of the white South African male. There had to be more on white South African men than just statistical data. I mean, for 300 years, white men in South Africa were all powerful. Every decision that was made about our collective lives was made by a series of white male patriarchal figures. who I could or could not marry and socialize with, was dictated to me by the wagging finger of P.W. Botha, who used heavy-handed methods to control anything that went against his white male view of the world.
I'm not prepared to accept a system of one man, one vote and majority government in South Africa.
They were not allowed to participate.
The more the voteless majority resisted. Old and young were shot and killed. Resistors were tortured in police cells and others disappeared.
And as they were getting burned down, we could see the Caspers.
Like my father, like all the headmasters at the plentiful schools I attended, PW just presented another authoritarian figure to rebel against, and I did most of the things he told us we could not do. But that was just a microscopic personal rebellion. The entire country exploded in retaliation to this authoritarian male regime, which was trying to control every aspect of everyone's life. Just how long did they think they could keep up this charade?
Celebrations swept South Africa. After half a century of apartheid and repression, the country seemed at last to be heading for democracy.
Do you think that there are less opportunities for white people, white males at this stage?
I can say that, yes.
Oh, why?
Because there's no opportunities. I mean, you go out, you give your CV, and then you're either overqualified or you're not qualified at all. So.
Do you think that there's competition from young black males now?
Of course there is. Of course there is.
Do you reckon they're getting the jobs as artisans? What jobs are young black males getting?
Corporate jobs. Business. Top class.
And you? Could you do it?
I think so. But you'd obviously have to study and, go further.
Do you have any ambition to study?
Not at the moment, no.
So, so the future is working in bars?
Yeah.
Somewhere in my deep subconscious, white men symbolized authority, pappenvors and rugby. But this is unfair. The only way to do the white South African man justice is to explore a range of views, beginning with the Afrikaner. I am a descendant of the Boers, but my mother had become anglicized and had broken away from the tribe, so to speak. So I have little understanding of what white male Afrikaners are experiencing in today's South Africa. I have heard the debates about whether whites can consider themselves African, and know that the most passionate aspect of this argument comes from a certain Afrikaans fraternity who consider themselves nothing other than African, and are fighting this usurping of their roles as Africans by the current government. As for me, I crisscross this debate, finding it impossible to relate to or even find my own views on the matter.
The Afrikaners see themselves as part of Africa, and through that, they've lost their European history. They say that we turn our back to Europe and we turn our face to Africa. So the fact of the matter is, Afrikaners don't have an alternative. We must be here and we must make a success of Afrikaners within Africa. We can't go anywhere. Our home is in Africa and we see ourselves as Africans. The problem at this stage is that we experience that the identity of the white male is taken away from him. And that is on more than one level. One experience that there is no political identity. Then we experience that suddenly he's been seen, and it is set in a lot of places, as the real criminal of the past. So you can't actually claim anything, you can't say anything, because suddenly you are the perpetrator. You can't put something on the table, you can't take in discussions, because you are seen as the perpetrator of the past. And the propaganda machinery is so effective in that suddenly people are beginning to believe that They believe that they are the perpetrators and that I can't actually act in my own capacity. I can't act in my own identity because I'm actually a perpetrator. Then it leads to, at the end of the day, a discredited identity within the family, within the community. Then you suddenly can't get any promotions because of your own hard work. It is you feel that you get promotion through an external third-party intervention, namely affirmative action. So suddenly you feel that you can't contribute anymore to your own life. There's a ceiling that you can't break through. And then you go through different stages. In the first place, it's a feeling of powerlessness, meaning that I'm within the system, but I'm not part of the system. Then a feeling of meaninglessness, that there's no meaning in the future. You don't see any future for you anymore. Then you feel more isolated because you say that the system are actually pushing me aside. The isolation also go then hand in hand with more feelings of frustration, about the feeling of hatred against the system and also at other people. And then it comes to the real dangerous part, where a person feels self-alienated. Then it's not alienated from the system only anymore, but from himself. I can't recognize myself. Suddenly I look at myself from a distance. And then the moment that happens, it leads to depression, and then it leads to suicide.
What we would like to see, we would like to have the youth especially have a new, or we would like to see the youth find and acknowledge what their identity is, whether you are black or white, English, Afrikaans, doesn't matter. And we'd like them to realize that and to live that out also, and to be proud of who and what they are, regardless of who and what they are. If somebody, for example, is superior, we would like to see also that person is proud to be superior, and that he would live as a superior and not be indulged by any other cultures, and he would be himself.
So it's really about purity of your own particular culture?
Yes, exactly. We the youth have nothing to apologize for, because I was like not even 10 years old in 1994. So that is something that I think should be acknowledged as well. From a youth perspective, especially from Solidarity Youth, we would like, we have already initiated a campaign in which we say that young people at least, or at least the youth, should be exempted from affirmative action.
Well, that was one perspective. But there had to be more to the South African white male dilemma than identification with a whiter and wealthier past and the mechanics of economics. Like, what about their sexuality? I am looking forward to speaking to an expert from the South African Sex Association. Has white male sexual behavior changed over the last decade? Have there been noticeable changes?
Yes, I think there is a noticeable change. It's some of them are global, some of them are local. I think globally, men are becoming more and more confused as to what does it mean to be a male. I think the advent of feminism has changed a lot. There's a lot of mixture of roles these days. Women are taking over more masculine roles, and I think there are a lot of men that just don't know where they are in that whole picture anymore. In particular, what we're seeing is a woman normally requires sex once for every 3 times that a man wants sex. So in relationships, we'll end up having a problem. Where let's say in the olden days, a man would assert his authority and He would have sex whenever he wanted within the relationship, and the woman would feel violated and she would feel abused. With women becoming more assertive sexually, they're saying, no, but I don't want it. I'm not in the mood, or whatever it is. And men are saying, okay, fine, then we don't do it, but now I feel denied. And this is causing strain in the relationships. A lot of couples don't know how to deal with this disparity. And we have this whole thing of, she's frigid and he's a sex maniac, all of these things. But it's just a normal change it's a normal difference in desire between the two sexes. And what we're seeing these days is much more of a realization that is the case, that it's not about me and it's not about you, it's just the way we are, and we have to deal with it. And within the practice, we see that where people normally would divorce or just move apart with this, there seems to be, certainly the people that I see, there seems to be more of a willingness to come to a compromise. They say, right, fine, we're different, and how do we sort this out?
I've read some statistics somewhere that there's a higher level of white males suffering from erectile dysfunction now in the post-1994.
I think that, yes, I haven't seen those figures, but one can surmise that with the stress levels, remember stress and erections just don't go together at all. So if a man is stressed out, if he's depressed, if he feels that what's the point of him being alive? And the last thing he's going to get is an erection. So from that point of view, certainly that would be a lot more contributing factors. But additionally, I think in terms of the effect on the relationships, it's now, for many men, the woman is the breadwinner in the family. He's lost his job, he hasn't got an income. And she has become the boss in the family. In that age group, that wasn't the standard that they had when they got married and throughout their whole lives. So he's having to deal with a change in sexuality, a change in status. He's having to deal with the fact that within the labor market possibly he's not wanted anymore. And the question comes up often, what am I hanging around for? What am I doing here? Who am I? So there's a lot of disillusionment, but there's also a lot of fear that I just don't have a right to be here anymore. That obviously spills over into relationships with their children, if they still have smaller children. If they have adult children, then the children normally have to end up supporting dad because he's just not the man he used to be anymore. And that puts strain on all relationships within the family.
So, this gets me thinking about the moneyed white youth and their take on democracy. Did they still consider themselves South African? Did they carry any of the political angst of my generation? And how do they perceive their futures?
As a young white South African man, do you think that you're paying for the sins of your forefathers?
Yeah, in a way. I do find black economic empowerment unfair in some circumstances. Like, you do hear about people losing their jobs due to recall to employ black South Africans. So yes, in a way I do, but then again, it is only fair that black people do have the same chance that we do.
To a slight extent, yes. I think it's kind of like a pendulum effect where in the past the white males did swing it one way, and to make up it's going to swing the other way, so somebody's got to pay the price.
Has it started swinging the other way?
That's like solidly the other way.
Really?
That's quite clear.
Do you see a future here?
I do. I don't think you can make it all just one big generalization.
I can't imagine it being anywhere but South Africa, really. I don't really feel like I belong anywhere else.
What is your sense of belonging to this country? What is it about it?
It's just my home. It's what I know. And it presents certain challenges.
I would say I'm a South African, yes.
And what are you studying here at varsity?
I'm doing quantity surveying, BSc, yeah.
Planning to stay in South Africa?
No.
I think it's more the fact that everyone had an idea that if you were up against a black person, the black person would get accepted over you no matter how good you were compared to them. And I think that's where the feeling of despondency came from. You thought that every time you went up for a job and you're up against a black candidate, they would get it and you would be left out?
I guess I think it depends on the field. I think some fields there's been a lot of change, and some fields there's still a lot of, I wouldn't call it discrimination, but still a lot of affirmative action, which probably still needs to go on for a while. So it depends on the field, and it depends on where people are needed, and it depends on you making your own opportunities, I guess.
I think at the moment it's starting to look a lot brighter than it was a couple of years ago, because there is a skill shortage in the country, and young white males are finding themselves little niches in the different areas, like in physics and in actuarial science and mathematics. And there is going to be there's an increase in the white males who are going into business in South Africa and being able to get through business in South Africa.
Everything's kind of against you now. Everything is. You're the bottom of like the food chain. And to be totally honest, I want to get out of this country, and that's the bottom line, because I give it 5 years before this place just dissolves. And I've had a history with my family that they've had to come from other African countries where the same sort of thing has happened. So maybe that's just paranoia inside me, that might just be created because of that. But at the same time, there are a lot of indicators that are leading to the same sort of just dissolution. And so I am feeling very lost in that. I don't feel at home. I don't feel like we're going forward. I feel like we're going backwards. And so I am very disillusioned and very lost. So,
I had finally tracked down one of the few academics who was dealing with the complex and understudied topic of white male subjectivities within the South African context. His focus was on the field of literature. A jazz musician himself, he has developed a jazz discourse which offers other possibilities beyond the constructs of our history.
Did you like Portrait with Keys?
I haven't read it. I really need to start reading novels again.
Oh, right, you must. It's an amazing book.
I think the sort of general dynamics within which white masculinity is understood at present is within a type of social demotion. I think that demotion is differently understood. I think most writers, most people thinking about social demotion think of it in economic and political terms, the very sort of overt markers of a loss of power. But I think writers are concerned, and I suppose this is one of the strengths of literature, writers are concerned with the sort of subtle ways in which white men have lost a particular purchase on understanding, and are looking in various novels at the ways in which white men are engaging meanings in this transformed context and trying to build a sort of way of approaching their own existence and their families and their role in society. It's a complex issue because the international scholarship seems to be proposing that there is such a thing as a crisis in masculinity quite generally and internationally. That particularly the sort of advent of feminism and gender studies, etc., is in certain respects problematized male subjectivity generally. But in South Africa it takes on a very particular inflection given the history of apartheid and our experience now of post-apartheid. I think you're right, in certain respects it is a psychological phenomenon, but I think it's more than that. I think it's a process not just of the experience of change, but also the ways in which people are grappling with the genuine implications of that for making meaning in a post-apartheid context, because I think men are enacting an array of different strategies, and I think it would be very simplistic to think of all white men as being in the same sort of category or the same position. And some of those are strategies in relation to black empowerment, but I think others are perhaps also strategies which overlap with black male experience in this country. So I think one has to, in a sense, avoid being too categorical. But given the sort of considerations with white South African men, I think they find themselves in a position where they are suddenly no longer those people who dispense power, kind of lords of all they survey, but are now frantically assembling meaning in a post-apartheid context where things are far more flexible, far more indeterminate, far more structured, and it's with the sort of challenges on a day-to-day basis that a lot of literature is contending.
I haven't noticed that it's particularly about having the power shifted from white male to black males. What I've noticed is the absence of power, which gives an absence of a reason for being. It's gone somewhere. I just don't have it anymore, and that causes all the problems. I haven't really, I suppose there are exceptions, but I haven't in my practice come across people that have that are in that position and harbour a grudge or have anger towards it. I haven't seen it, no.
Okay, I can have relationships with black people, but it's never going to be like, I don't know, there's still some kind of level of, it only goes so far, or you kind of have roles that are set in the country already, and you just live up to that role. Like, you wonder if you're white, okay, well, eventually maybe this guy's going to overtake me in the job arena, or competitively here, or he'll get more money here, or whatever. So you kind of accommodate each other, but I don't know how genuine the feelings really are. Because I just feel like this country, most people are just in competition with each other. There's no real country spirit at all. It's all kind of fending for yourself. And on top of that, now if you're white and male, you're at a bit of a disadvantage because you don't necessarily have, like laws that are backing this or BE policy or whatever. So it just kind of becomes, you see black people, and you mustn't be racist or whatever, but it's I don't know how genuine it's that Ubuntu feelings really are between anyone.
I guess it's hard to not be negative, but there is a lot of opportunity these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but there's definitely, I think it's clear that things are getting better, and that there is going to be opportunities, but yeah, as James says, you can't help but be negative just because of what's happened and stuff. So.
What happened?
Or just with the past and whatever.
No, well, you don't really belong anywhere. It's like you, I don't know. It's just terrible. I don't enjoy it.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, being dead serious.
Is there a crisis of identity amongst?
No, not so much a crisis of identity. It's more like you just don't belong. I don't know. It's like you're. I don't know how to explain it. Sorry.
I don't have that opinion at all, though. I think I know exactly what my role is in the country.
And what is that?
Well, I'm a minority, so I have to fend for myself. And I'd like things to get better and, equal opportunities, but ultimately you have to fend for yourself because no one's really looking after your interests. So.
When I look around, it seems to me that most whites are still having a darn good time of it. And the majority of blacks still have to sing for their supper.
The challenges for South Africa is to address imbalances, but without creating new forms of imbalances. And that the problem is at this stage, you create new forms of imbalances in trying to address old forms of imbalances. And the fact of the matter is, if you look at how imbalances are addressed at this stage in South Africa, it's addressed in such a way that it's actually a very small part of the elite that enjoy any benefits because of that specific process. The majority in South Africa simply does not enjoy any benefits because of the transformational system. So the majority in the first place is excluded. In the second place, the minority feel alienated. And if you sit with a majority with unfulfilled expectations and the minority that feel alienated, it will lead to social disruption. So at this stage, the transformational model in South Africa does not work for the majority, neither for the minority. So the challenge for South Africa is then to address transformation in such a way that you include the majority without alienating the minority.
I think the power base has been eroded from a political sense, it's been eroded from the feminist sense, and they're just kind of stuck in the middle and just, what am I doing here?
One has to just be both cautious and tentative when one makes any statement about white men, because there is such a multiplicity of experiences, such a range of different reactions to the past, and such an incredibly diverse set of expectations for the future. And there is nothing simple in the equation.
And that's a dilemma in South Africa, that the minority actually feels that they are excluded, they can't take part. The model that is actually used in the transformation process in South Africa and that put the whites in South Africa in a big dilemma is a very simple model. There's perpetrators and then there's victims. The perpetrators can't have full rights because they must pay their debt to the victims. And if you want to put as a perpetrator your issue on the table, it is simply said, listen, your debt is not paid up to now, so you can't have full rights. And that leads then to, at the end of the day, estrangement from the politics and the society of the day.
All change comes from pain to a large extent, and this is the painful process of having to look, reevaluate, let go of old ideas, embrace new ideas. And for those who can handle that process, they'll come out the other end and they will have gone a step further. For a lot of people that can't handle that, the only place where they can go, other than staying in the central despair, is to move back into conservatism, because that has got rules and structures and things that are known and were known for me before. And if I can't handle the changes, then I'll go back to what I know, and that's the danger.
What interests me in many ways about demotion, about social demotion, is if one thinks about it as a kind of loss of a point of certainty, that men suddenly find themselves in a much more complex environment where it's up to them to make meaning and to craft a place for themselves. It's no longer something which is simply given to white men by virtue of their birth. As a consequence, they need to improvise a way of being at home and a way of behaving within the new dispensation. And jazz is an interesting model for that process of improvisation. It means that we can't just approach the world that we live in with a sort of blueprint that we expect the world to conform to, but rather what we need to do is to find ways of performing ourselves meaningfully in a changed and much more variable context. And so for me, jazz is an important model of the ways in which white maleness might now be performed as opposed to the ways it was performed in the past.
I read over Brent's story again. My name is Brent Besaidnout. Except for growing up on Ritalin, I am fairly normal. At least I thought I was until I left school. That is when I started to feel that there was something wrong with me, something about myself that would not allow me to get ahead in life. I was shaving in the mirror, just nicked my skin with a razor, and while I was wiping off the blood, it occurred to me like a bolt of lightning. My skin was wrong with me. My gender was wrong with me. I am the new enemy of the state, white male, pale male, previously advantaged kid. I live in the new South Africa, and my personal packaging is wrong, all wrong. What future does the new South Africa hold for me?